Good evening. Welcome to the City Council regular meeting of January 21st. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So our roll call this evening is we do have a full council. We're very pleased to have Councilmember Agnew with us. It's great to see you this evening. If everybody has a chance to look over the meeting agenda, is there anything that anybody would like to see changed in any way or fashion? All right, seeing Councilmember Evans.
Could I pull the minutes from the January 14th study session?
All right. So we have the minutes from the January 14th session, which is on consent agenda A. Anybody else? All right, seeing none. Moving on to projected agenda, we should have a copy on the dais tonight. If anybody got a chance to look over that, any additions, changes, or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move further. Special presentation this evening. We do have a presentation by the Flotilla 21 of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And here it says page 5. I don't have a page 5. If you just hold on one second. So, good evening. Laura Hathaway, our city clerk, is presenting. Is that correct?
Actually, I'm just going to introduce Gary.
That's it.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. My name is Garrison Bromwell. I'm the division commander of the 2nd Division of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, which is the greater Seattle area. It includes 4 flotillas, one of which is Flotilla 21, shoreline, we call it the North Shore Flotilla, shoreline Bothell, Kenmore. And the flotilla commander of Flotilla 21 is with me, Gary Proudlock.
Thank you.
Good evening.
What we'd like to do is to make it, we have worked with the Parks Department for a couple of years in doing our boating safety courses in Bothell Landing. And we deeply appreciate the Parks Department, the people working for it, the space that we have over there to conduct these classes, to try to keep people safe out on the water. We call it preventative search and rescue. So I'd like at this time to make a presentation to the Parks Department itself. And I think you're from the Parks Department, right? Come on. And the first one is just to the Parks Department in recognition of the contribution to our recreational boating safety program. And the other one is Rick Jones present?
He's not.
Okay. We have a special one also to Rick Jones, recognizing his direct contribution and his help to us. And so thank you very much and appreciate the time.
Sure, I've got a question for you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, how do you present the boat safety courses? Are you on land? Are you in the water at Bothell Landing?
These are classroom courses taught by certified instructors from the auxiliary. The basic boating course, which is a nationally approved course, is an 8-hour hands-on. We make our students do a lot of different things in the class, including a little life jacket show and tell and things like that.
And are you conducting them in the park or in the Lightel House?
In the Lightel House.
In the Lightel House, right.
Perfect.
Good.
Well, thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Nice to meet you both.
Tom, see you later.
So next is our visitor section. Tonight I have the visitors sign-in sheet. Currently don't have anybody signed up. Is there anybody who'd like to speak during this visitor section at all? No show of hands. Okay, moving on then. Our consent agenda, we did have one item removed, which we can discuss just after the consent agenda. Is there a motion to move the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Agnew for the consent agenda. If anybody can place their vote. And if clerk can display. Oh, mine is on. And if you want to display now. Great, passes unanimously. Okay. So we have no contracts and agenda on the item or the agenda tonight. I think we should address January 14th. So it should be on pages between 7 and 18. Councilmember Evans, do you want to make some comments on what happened there?
Yes, please. On item 3, under council committee reports, mentions that Deputy Mayor Spivey and Councilmember Evans reported on an upcoming ESCI meeting, and we may have said it wrong or whatever, but I just wanted to clarify that we reported on the RFA committee and the selection of ESCI consultants to assist with compilation and analysis of information. It was really, I was reporting on the RFA meeting, and we were stating that we had hired the consultant ESI to help us with that. And then for what it's worth, I also said that the consultant contract will be administered by the city. So I just wanted to make that correction to the minutes.
I would move to approve with the corrections just provided by Councilor Evans.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Evans. Is there any discussion? All right, well, the motion, hopefully the clerk captured what Councilmember Evans said. Good. So that would be as moved by Councilmember Lamb and seconded by Councilmember Evans. If everybody would like to place their vote. And if the clerk can display. And it passes unanimously with nobody opposed. Next item on the agenda tonight is AB 1413, consider appointments to the 2014 council committees. Councilmember Agnew, we placed you basically on everything during your absence. Hopefully you'll consent to that. So if everybody wants to move to that packet, again, that's AB 1413, consider approval of 2014 council committee appointments. I know we have a contact person as Robert Stowe, but I don't believe there's a presentation this evening, so I'll just take it from there unless you have something you would like to say.
No, I think you're all aware of the discussion that was held last week in regards to the committees. Certainly here to address any questions that council might have.
Great. So I'm scanning down to the chart, which I'm finding on page 61 of 160. So everybody hopefully had a chance to glance over those and see that they're, as you recall them from last week. I'd like to give Councilmember Agnew any thoughts and consideration as I read through each line, and if you see your name on there, if you want it still on there or removed, please let us know. So what I have on record here is on the Capital Facilities Plan Committee, we have Councilmember Evans, Lamb, and Rayum. Economic Development Committee would be Evans, Freed, and Lamb with the alternate Spivey. Human Services Committee, alternate Evans. The appointments would be Lamb, Rayum, and Sandberg. The Public Safety Committee would be Agnew and Lamb as the appointments, and Spivey as the appointment, and the alternate would be Sandberg. Regional Fire Authority Planning Committee would be Agnew, Evans, and Spivey as the appointments. The Ministerial Boards for Joint City and Fire District Advisory Board, the appointments are Agnew and Spivey. The left one board appointments would be Agnew and Spivey. King County Jail Assembly Group, Councilmember Sandberg was passionate about that one and volunteered. The Coalitions and Elected Officials Association of Snohomish County Cities and Towns would be Councilmember Lamb. Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering Committee, Councilmember Sandberg with alternative Lamb. Sound Cities Association, Councilmember Rayum is offered to serve as the appointment with Agnew as the alternate. Wyra 8 Forum, Rayum would be the appointment and Sandberg the alternate, and I would serve on the mayoral committees. Moving on to the Health, Tourism, Arts, Parks, and Recreation committees. The first is Lodging Tax Advisory Committee with Spivey as the appointment and the alternate as Evans. North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area Board would be Evans and Spivey as the appointments with the alternate as Rayum. Snohomish County Conservation Futures appointment would be Sandberg and alternate Evans. Eastside Transportation Partnership Rayum and Sandberg as the appointments. We had one willing to be the alternate, which was Spivey. We still have room for one more if anybody's considered that over the last week. Seashore, we decided last week that we would no longer participate in regards to council members attending those meetings. Staff is certainly, when they have interest to go to those meetings, of course, would go. UW Bothell Cascadia Community College Traffic Advisory Committee, Rayum would be the appointment with the alternate Evans. And nobody volunteered for the Community Transit 2-year term, which actually that meeting was last Thursday, right? I think that's really what we focused on, is who would go to that meeting. So does anybody have any, I guess there's no motion on the table, but we could make a motion to
So
ratify
moved.
these? Okay. So a motion by Lamb, a second by Councilmember Evans. Is there any discussion? Is anybody on any committees that are just adamant they don't want to be? Councilmember Rayum?
I just, under page 61, the Regional Fire Authority Planning Committee, we have 3 people on there and no alternate, and I was just going to propose that we have an alternate on that committee. I don't know what the bylaws are for that committee, but it seems like a good idea since the next 2 years are critical.
Regional Fire Authority Planning Committee, the 3 appointments? Councilmember Spivey, you have a comment on that?
I don't think state law allows for an alternate. That committee, the rules for that are set out in RCW, and I don't recall that allows for an alternate.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Any comments? Councilmember Agnew, are you okay with the places you're already serving? Yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. Well, seeing no further comment, if everybody would like to vote, ratify the appointments as read. And if the clerk could display the vote. So it passes unanimously with nobody opposed. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have the public hearing to consider approval of resolution to update the Parks Recreation Open Space Action Plan, also known as the PROSAP, which is AB 1414. And I know we do have public sign up, but we do have a presentation from our city staff first. And Pat Parkhurst with our presentation. Thanks, Pat, for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to hold a public hearing and then continue, as well as continue discussion that Council started in December regarding the update to PROSAP, the Parks Recreation Open Space Action Program. We've also scheduled a potential follow-up hearing on February 4th. So if we're unable to complete everything tonight, we can come back and complete it then. I'm going to do a quick overview of some of the information I presented last time for the benefit of the audience. We update PROSAP every 6 years. It's required to qualify for state funding. And this year, this go-around, we need to get our plan into the state by March 1st to qualify for the 15-16 funding. It's a planning tool that should guide the decisions involving acquisition, development, operation, and programming of parks and recreation and open space through the year 2025, and again, every 6 years it's updated. We had 4 community workshops with 40-plus people attending. We did online surveys. We had 5 park board meetings over 8 months, and then we've had 1 city council meeting. The first section of the plan is the executive summary. It sets the goals, policies, and actions for the plan. Some existing conditions and data. City-owned facilities within the city limits. We have 272.72 total acres of park, and we've updated these numbers to include East Norway Hill Park, which is part of the annexation that will take place at the end of February. Of those 272 acres, 86 plus acres are developed, 40 is undeveloped, and 146 is open space. Existing conditions of other public lands, which is land owned by the university and the state and King County within our city limits. We have 261.43 total acres, 41.2 is developed, and 202.23 is open space. So the foundation level of service is how we measure whether we're where we want to be as far as the number of acres of parkland. This does not necessarily address whether it's developed or undeveloped, but more the total acres that we would like to have. So currently, we have our goal is 4.5 acres per thousand population, and we have 272 acres. I'm looking at this one. This doesn't even go into the detail of where I was going. And we've split it so that the core parkland or active parkland, we say our goal is 129.72 acres, and that we need 27.43 more to meet that goal of total parkland. In addition, that's broken down by the type of park. The numbers that have a negative are the park category that we have more than what our goal was that we set. So we have a goal of 4.5 acres of mini parks, and we actually have 6.37 more acres than we need for a total of 10.42. It goes down. And then for open space and other parklands, regional parks such as Centennial Park, we've set a goal of 56.12 acres per thousand. For the city, and we have over 114.31 additional acres than the 56.12. So that was our goal. That's where we are, based on the 2014 population, including the annexation area. This is what happens when you look at just the Snohomish County Muga. With the annexation taking place, we really now only have one area that we have to focus on as to what their needs will be in the future. So there's a additional 15.16 acres of park needed in the Snohomish County Muga area. This is a proposed foundation of level of service. Again, taking our existing, the demand, and what we see as the additional needs in 2025 when you plug in the projected population. So for active parkland, we need 40.11 acres additional active. And again, we still have more regional and open space than is our goal. So we've exceeded that goal. And this is the Muga area. This is the Snohomish County area again. Would need 37.27 acres of active parkland and 178.2 of open space. This is a list of the projects, and they are listed in priority as the park board saw them of importance. And there's 14 on the top half of this list. And the bottom half are projects that the park board felt were important, but were not necessarily high enough to reach the categorized list at the top. So briefly, on the agenda bill that was handed out, I had done a table. It's on attachment 1, page 67 of the packet. The table was to summarize the council discussions from the previous meeting. These were not necessarily items that had consensus, but items that the council discussed, and we needed to revisit and determine if the changes were needed. And then all the tables that were updated are in your packet. I also have maps, and I'll bring up the one map for you to see. GIS was able to get the maps all updated today. So this map, hopefully it'll show it all. I get it all in. This shows, I'm trying to pull it down, all the parks and open space in the city. Just moving slow. So it doesn't quite fit. I'll reduce it for you, but you can see down to East Norway Hill and up to Centennial Park. And I have maps that break down the community parks and the neighborhood parks if you wish to see them, and the athletic fields. So if open up to questions or.
Great, thanks so much, Pat. Probably just be in the chronological way we've listed our agenda. We'll have public make comment, and then maybe have council ask questions.
So we also have tonight, I don't think Roger Cecil isn't here yet, but Rhonda Cyberdona is here from the Parks and Recreation Board, and Roger was expected to try and make it tonight as well.
Perfect. We'll look forward. Ron, do you have anything to contribute to the presentation?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. Like she said, I'm one of the members of the Park and Rec Board, and we felt that there was a question on policy number 5 where we had taken out the acquisitions of future parks and development of existing sites should be balanced, and we changed that statement, and we felt based on the different open houses that we had and the citizens that came in, and they prioritized all of the different items that they spoke to. They wanted to develop the parks that we currently have, and they wanted the acquisitions to be set back. However, we felt that in policy number 6, that that one was flexible enough that it allowed us to purchase acquisitions if they presented themselves. So we felt that the board itself felt that that policy number 6 remained flexible enough so that if the acquisitions did come up, that the city council could go ahead and purchase those.
Great. Thank you, Rhonda.
Do you have any questions?
We will probably right after we'll let the public address the
Okay.
council.
Thank you.
Just so everybody knows how it will go this evening, I'd like to hear from the community first, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the council. And at that point, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing, and then we could have council deliberations after that. So I have a sign-up agenda, or sign-up tonight for this agenda item. First on the list is David Bain. We do have your address. So David, welcome. Good to see you again.
Well, I'd like to start by thanking you for agreeing to annex my neighborhood. So I look forward to being a Bothell resident once again in just a few weeks now. The comment I'd like to make is on the priority list, and I'd like to see the North Creek Forest project moved up. And I'm not asking that it be moved up on the funding side, but moved up on it being one of the goals of the city of Bothell. When I first came to you, you said you liked the idea of North Creek Forest, but you wanted the community to work for it. And I think that was a great decision because the community has come together and done a lot of work to make 2/3 of it happen so far. And we'd like to be able to tell the outside world that we have your strong blessing to continue to work for the final third. So not only have we raised federal, state, and county funds from both counties, we've also brought in volunteers from around the region. And we've been able to do almost all the maintenance work on the forest that you've acquired so far, and I think we've got a pretty good social infrastructure in place to continue doing that. So I think when the Parks Board was setting priorities, it was thinking in terms of funding, but I'd like you to see North Creek Forest as a community activity that you would like to see proceed, that you like the idea of the public-private partnership to raise money to acquire parkland. You like having the public being actively involved in the maintenance and stewardship of that parkland. You like the public using it as an educational resource. And I think that, if you move it up on the priority list, that'll lower our degree of difficulty in trying to raise funds and increase the likelihood that we'll acquire all the land that we've targeted and be able to give all the owners fair market value for their land. And then we'll have a great resource for the city of Bothell going forward. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate your comments this evening. Jim Freeze, we have your address already for the record. Good to see you, Jim.
Mayor, Free Council. We also submitted, Friends of North Creek Forest also submitted some items that we're requesting be added as amendments to PROSAP, and I'll hit a few of them here. They all fall under vision of trying to create a harmony between the built and natural environment, maximize wildlife habitat, and encourage development in areas that are in harmony with that. And under optimizing wildlife habitat, the first one was PRP 25, and that involved essentially coordination of acquisition of parklands to include consideration for corridors of matrix for wildlife habitat. And PRP 26 consider utilizing permeable surfaces when upgrading park facilities as a surface water issue. In this case, salmon habitat would be improved. We'd like to, under 27, we'd like to see the tree ordinance, look at the tree ordinance included in the parks plan to look at receiving areas when you're doing mitigation, establish some receiving areas for trees, align the land acquisition goals with stake recommendation for ratio of open space to population was P28. And 29 was balance the city inventory of pocket parks between needs for recreation and natural areas. On 30, P30, we were asking to, where possible and appropriate, use native vegetation wherever possible in areas that are not directly impacted by recreation, because that increases the edges, the wildlife matrix. Just have a few more here. One is, and we'd like to help the city work on a grant for this, would be to contract for a citywide forest tree survey, which would establish the biological health, a baseline for biological health for the city's forests that we could work from. And promote conversion of, let's see, PRA, I don't have that one, but the last number, but on page 15, promote conversion of residential garden space to native plant species, prioritizing outreach to those residents bordering wildlife habitat, natural areas, and wetlands. The idea being to get rid of the sharp line where we can. It would be a public-private thing. If the city would promote it, perhaps nonprofits could step up and do the work to increase those edges. And
Jim, did you provide these
more
comments?
there, you'll find them. We found out we can't ask to have knotweed removed at this level. Apparently, that is a broader issue.
Did you provide these comments already? You said tonight?
No, they've been submitted.
Submitted priorly.
And I was
Okay.
just kind of explaining the background for them.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freese. Next on the sign-up sheet is Rhonda.
Oh, yeah, I already spoke.
Oh, that's right, you did.
Thank you.
Thanks. Steven Seiler? Welcome, and we do have your address already.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Pardon my voice. I was afflicted with Seahawks fever on Sunday, and my throat hasn't quite recovered yet.
Funny.
I'm a former Bothell resident. I currently work in the city, and I utilize the sports fields at North Creek a couple times a week. My understanding of this plan is there's interest in reaching out into other sports. I play rugby football, and I play at a number of levels throughout the region, and I also organize a team in a over 40 rugby union. All of the other teams besides the Seattle team come from Canada, and many of the teams in the men's and women's level in the area host teams from Canada. There are only several rugby fields in the region. There's one at Magnuson Park in Seattle. There's rugby played at Marymore and Redmond. Neither of these fields have shower facilities, which are important to visitors who are traveling a long ways. I did some quick math before I came, and between all the home teams over youth, there are about 50 home games a year between Seattle and Magnuson. As somebody who Magnuson and Marymore, as somebody who schedules fields, the Seattle field is often booked and is hard to access. So what I'd like to say is that in terms of rugby, there is a demand for a rugby field, particularly on the north end of Seattle, especially if there are shower facilities. Teams who come and visit, we host them for a meal at some establishment afterwards, so this can also enhance the local economy as well. Youth rugby is also a growing sport. Rugby and lacrosse are the fastest growing youth sports in the country now, and there is a number of youth teams in the Bothell area, so there is also demand there. I'd be happy to provide specific information around teams or association contacts to provide more information for this.
Great. Will you entertain a question?
Certainly.
Great. Councilmember Lamb.
I had a question about the shower facilities remark, because I don't think that our public restrooms have those, but I know at the YMCA, which is adjacent to our turf fields, they do have shower facilities. Is that what you're contemplating, or would it be something?
Something convenient. We already do arrangements like that,
Okay.
and private facilities are not always amenable, or they're not always open to the schedules that we have.
Okay.
Whereas public facilities are more routinely open and available.
But when you say public facilities, do you mean like a public restroom at the athletic field that has showers as part of that, or?
Yeah, a place to take showers after the game.
Okay.
That would, if there is a demand for a rugby field, preferably not synthetic turf. We play on both kinds. There's some debate as to whether or not synthetic turf causes more injuries.
Okay.
And so natural turf is preferred by many, and we're having trouble with the Old Boys team, for instance, finding a field that's often available, that's on the north end for Canadian visitors, that have shower facilities available.
So do you know, and forgive my ignorance of rugby, but what are the dimensions? Are the dimensions roughly similar to a soccer field, or are they? Okay. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Great. Councilmember Sandberg.
You kind of already answered the question. I was wondering if there were any other special considerations besides shower facilities that rugby play requires. And you said, and I was going to ask about the condition of sports field, but I think you already answered that you prefer natural grass over turf.
There's demand for natural grass field at this time.
And does rugby play year-round? What's the length of your season?
Yes, year-round.
Okay, thanks.
There tends to be a lull period during the, beginning, end of the year in the summer months, just because it's, busy holiday or family time, summertime.
Thanks.
Great. Councilmember Rayam.
Somewhat off topic, but I don't very often have a chance to ask a rugby player. Is it true that rugby, you have less injury than you do with typical football or playing football?
So this is an interesting proposition. Most people think, well, you've got a helmet, you've got pads, therefore you're safer. When you are not wearing a helmet, when you're not wearing pads, and maybe you've ever played football out in the park with your buddies, and you think, I can really just hit this guy. And you probably stop to think, this is going to hurt me too. Without the helmet, without the pads, you cannot hit somebody as hard, which means there is less impact, which means there is less opportunity for injury. In football, American football now, there is a movement to get, and this is now a rule in the NFL, not to hit with the crown of the helmet. This is where most of the spinal injuries come into play. In rugby football, you can only be tackled if you have the ball. You cannot be hit. You have to wrap. So it has to be a wrap. And most of the tackles that you see on TV are hits, where they're just putting the shoulder in and they're not wrapping. So if people follow the rules and follow the technique, injuries are very uncommon, and over the last several years, I've only heard of just 3 spinal injuries over the last 4 years around the community from Canada down to Oregon.
That's fascinating. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate your
And
time.
over 40, rugby.
We might all fall into that category. Any further comment? Any further visitors like to make comment on this agenda item? Does Chairman Cecil want to say anything? I think I'm okay. All right. Great. Well, we'll jump into council questions at this point. Does anybody questions or comments on this agenda item? Yeah, Councilmember Rahim. Oh, you are. Councilmember Evans actually has presented me with some comments, and I believe has passed them out to everybody on the dais.
Thank you, Mayor. This looks like a lot of comments. I did go through the plan several times, and I tried to summarize them, and hopefully I can go through them very quickly. I'd just like to preface my remarks with I appreciate the Park Board for the work they have done on this, because having worked with park boards in the past and trying to set these priorities and things and hearing from the public, it's a tough job. So I really appreciate what they did, and I don't mean to discredit anything they did. And these are just some of my thoughts. And so I again want to thank the board for their efforts, and certainly the staff too. I know Pat Parkhurst and I have talked several times about the comp plan and potential changes or additions. The other thing I would hope, as this is this is concluded, that there'll be some type of a summary report that would go in the bylines, because public input is always a hard thing to get at any of our public meetings. So if there's any way that we can make the community more aware of the comprehensive park and recreation plan, I would like to do that if that's possible in future publications we do. So with that, just quickly, I tried to put the page number on these, and so I will just go through this and briefly explain my reason for my change. The first one is on page 7, which I would like to add an additional sentence in here that states the remaining urban growth area includes, in whatever that population is. I'd have to get that from Bill Weislogo on what that population, but trying to and currently utilize existing park and recreation facilities. I know when the RCO looks at these plans, and the fact that we're now a city of 40,000, but in reality we serve far more than 40,000 people. We serve people from all of the unincorporated areas and things. And so I just want to, the OFM number that was stated here seemed kind of low to me through 2025. So just a sentence that indicates that we are an urban area that it's not just our city limits. We serve a very large area. So anytime that we can make that information available in our comp plan, I think it helps our position down at RCO as we compete for grants. And then page 12 talks about review of the plan, and again, I just wanted to insert the word City Council. It's another group, another opportunity for public input. Public input is another thing that's very important to them down there, and as they go through grants and things. So just add that statement in there. On page 14, and I think one of the Park Board members spoke to this earlier, maybe it was Rhonda, but the goal, the policy, PRG5 is a new one that I would like to see added. I know we talked a little bit about that, or maybe it was discussed before, but again, my concern is that our city is rapidly filling in, and vacant parcels are going away. And I know the Park Board emphasized the need to improve what we have right now, and I agree with that. But I don't think if we don't take action to acquire more parklands as they're available, they're going away quickly. So in my mind, acquisition of parkland, passive, active, whatever it may be, is always a high priority, and I think we should keep it that way. So I would like to just add a goal there, number 5, that would say to acquire and develop land for active park and recreation facilities. So that's just, again, my background is that the land's going away, and the more of it we can preserve, the better. On page 14, in the fourth sentence there, add the statement, fourth sentence, that these goals and policies will be updated in 2014 as part of the citywide comprehensive plan update. And again, it's merely showing anyone who views this plan is that it's a working plan. We're constantly updating it. We're going to update it in 2014, or part of the comp plan process. We'll add some things to this. So I just, again, it's important to show that we're working on things and updating as we go, and we're looking for public involvement always. Let's see, maybe so I guess now page 14, PR policy 5 would state acquisition of future park sites and development of new and existing parks should be balanced. I know the park board changed that, and I certainly understand their reasoning for doing that, but balance, I think, can be a fairly general term, but I just want to keep emphasis on acquisition of properties as they become available. Certainly we want to develop what we have too, but I think anytime we can preserve property, we should do that. So I would like to add that as an additional goal there. The next one, I think, is on page 18. It would be action 14. Would read, or my recommendation would be, acquisition of future park sites and development of new and existing parks should be balanced. Oh, wait a minute, I got to go down to 18. Implement the adopted 2008 master plan for the park at Bothell Landing and develop in phases as funding is available. Just a very general comment, but I think the master plan for the park at Bothell Landing was $13 million estimate, and we're going to have a hard time putting that all together at one time, but I think we can develop it in phases, and I would just wanted to emphasize that the phasing is, once it's available, we should develop in phases. Again, on page 18, PRA 16. I hope I'm following these right or making sense of these, so let me know if I'm heading in the wrong direction here, or if I'm missing anything. PR 16, A16.
So I was just looking, Councilmember Evans, on
Yep.
page 18, PRA 16, implement the master plan for Blythe Park, including playground equipment. You want to change the whole sentence and strike out for playground equipment, just say as funding is available?
Right. In other words, I want to implement the master plan. That could be playground equipment, that could be trails, it could be all kinds of things. But the point is, let's implement the master plan as soon as funding is available. So
So to understand correctly, you just don't like the focus potentially on just playground improvements. You want the whole master plan addressed.
I'm all in favor of playground equipment, but I'd like to keep it a global, up at a higher level here, and just develop the park as funding becomes available.
Thank you.
So on page 26, this is the one I briefly addressed, I guess last week or last time we discussed this, and I just wanted to add change that sentence, the third sentence in that paragraph 4, to read, Parks and recreation facilities will be included as part of the downtown redevelopment. A new park will be added in addition to improvements planned for the park at Bothell Landing. Public use of private facilities similar to public improvements planned at McMenamins should be encouraged. And we are getting some public facilities that are certainly public use of some of the McMenamins facilities, and anytime we can encourage partnerships, public-private partnerships or joint use of facilities, I think that's a good thing in my mind. There may or may not be opportunities for that downtown, but again, this is just a general broad goal. Moving on to page 55. makes reference to under proposed athletic fields, we've listed the First Lieutenant Nicholas Medroza Memorial Park, and I really think earlier in the document we've classified that as a community park, so I think that that item should be moved back under community parks, which is on page 53. I think it fits better in that category. Page 63, 4.3. Okay, this is kind of the last big one that I had a feeling about, and as I was sitting down looking at the development priorities as they were listed in the plan and ranking them, I was thinking, okay, what would be my ranking if I could rank these facilities? And I started trying to look at what was important and maybe a little more important than the others, and the thought was, you know, these are all priorities. I don't know why we need to rank them. I know the park board struggled with that a little bit, but in my mind, I think these are all priorities, and it was kind of like the legislative agenda that we did, where we didn't, you know, we had different bullets there, and some came out as one or two, but the point was they were really all of our priorities, and one may not have been more important than the other. And that's kind of the way I feel about these priority projects, is they're all important, and so ranking them, I don't think the RCO requires that. I know it can create a little consternation when we do try to rank them, so my thought was I just went down through them and alphabetized them and said, these are our priority projects, and I think I picked up most of them out of there, tried to include everything. And so what would happen if, in fact, this were what we were to do, then the staff would just add in the category and the estimated cost and development cost to these things. But this is just a different approach to prioritizing things rather than ranking them. They're priority projects, and they're listed alphabetically, and they're all important, equally important in my mind. And then the other category could be other priority projects, and what I did is I tried to pick up the other ones that were shown here and include those. I didn't list the individual neighborhood parks acquisitions and things because that came up, and consequently it came up as number one because it was the first A acquisition. So I didn't put it there because that's what I think is important. I just, again, ranked them in alphabetical order, or listed. So the other priority projects is strictly, you know, the ones that were left over, the DNR acquisitions, Sammamish River Trail and Boat Launch, and Wayne Golf Course, and acquiring the back nine. So as I looked at it, this was just another approach that came to my mind, and something for discussion on the council. And that's my comments.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilor Evans. I really appreciate you presenting all this written out. It's extremely helpful to follow your thoughts, and appreciate the perspective you bring to it, for sure. Anybody other further comments, questions? Councilmember Ram.
So one of the speakers tonight mentioned a list of stuff that we don't have identified in our packet. Is that
They were in your packet in December.
that was in the packet? It was just in the comments.
There was all the written materials that were received from the community were included in the packet in December.
Okay.
So
And then the comments were
the park board reviewed the comments.
okay.
So those were presented to the park board. They reviewed the comments and put the ones that they felt were appropriate into ProSap. So they did not take every single comment that was presented and put it into ProSap.
Okay. Yeah, because I didn't notice which one was it? It's on page 94. PRA 43 said complete acquisition of the North Creek Forest, and I thought that was something that was mentioned was missing by one of the speakers. So I just wanted to.
Okay.
And then just to ride on his coattails, Councilmember Evans had a lot of great points. I really like the idea of adjusting the on page 18, PRA 14, I think same page, PRA 16, about instead of identifying one unique element of a master plan, just to say implement the master plan for the park. I think that's a great idea. Especially from the context of grant writing. Like if you were trying to propose something else and the priority item that's on there wasn't built yet, then they would wonder how important this is. And then especially with the priority projects ranking, to eliminate ranking from that list, I think is a really good idea. Just really probably helps a lot, especially in grant writing opportunities, to say this, it's on the priority ranking list instead of, oh, it's number 5 out of 14 things on the list. So, so that's all the questions I had for now. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Councilmember William. Any other questions? No? Councilmember Sandberg?
Well, also like to echo Councilmember Evans. Thanks for the hard work that the Parks Board did and the community and staff really working hard on this document. It's really refreshing to see all that information reflected and the community input reflected in the document. So, and there's a lot of changes in this document over the last time it was written. So that's good, because documents should change over time and they should reflect changing community needs. And so thanks again for all that hard work. And one question I had is if it would be appropriate and informational to add an appendix to the PROSAP that lists the projects that have been completed. We do something like that with the capital facilities plan. So instead of just striking the language altogether and letting it fall from memory, we sort of capture, what are the things that we have accomplished. So it doesn't always look like a dream document. It looks like an actionable document. And so I thought instead of just striking that language out and kind of letting it fall away in the history books, capturing that in an appendix. And, that list could grow over time, or you would just pare it down to on a rolling 6-year cycle and on, what were the important accomplishments in the last 6 years or since the last PROSAP. So I was wondering if you felt that was reasonable, if that was something that you could add, and maybe the Parks Board, if they had a strong feeling about that too, they could comment on that.
From my perspective, it wouldn't take very long to do that. Probably be a 1-page.
Okay. And then the policy change language in PRP5 also really caught my eye. And if I understand what Councilmember Evans is saying, you want it to revert back to the original language. Is that correct, Councilmember Evans? So you want it to be originally stated as prioritizing acquisition, well, not balancing acquisition with improvements versus prioritizing improvements over acquisition. Is that the case? And so my first question was, where did that language change come from? And our representative from the Parks Board said, well, that was based on community input, and I want to honor community input. That's why we have the process. But I am concerned that that language, the power of that language in policy number 5, is not offset by the subsequent language that says, we will also acquire as needed, because that's a very powerful statement. And so maybe someone from the Parks Board can speak to, I know Rhonda already spoke to, the rationale for the change, but I don't know how unresponsive to community input would you think it would be if the original language was retained that struck the balance?
So I'm Roger Cecil, Chairman of the Parks Board. our last meeting was almost all about this subject in particular. And I think probably our conclusion was, I think we understood from the council's perspective, strong language like that could potentially limit, I guess, what you can do. We weren't sure how the document worked, how it governed or limited or guided what you do. So I think pretty much unanimously we understood what that language was kind of doing to you, in a sense. In other words, it's possible that by putting that kind of language where we're going to develop land as a priority over acquiring land, does that in any way, in certain situations, limit an opportunity that you might have to buy land? And so I think we pretty much, after that discussion, we were going to write some kind of response to the discussion in the last council meeting. I think we decided not to. Is that right? Yeah. But I think we all completely understood and are okay with the balanced approach. I mean, I think it's hard for anybody to have a problem with the balanced approach, right? And I think when you're looking at a guiding document that informs your processes, I think the balanced approach is good. And I think everybody I think was fine with that. I think probably we would say we would want you to know the reason we went to that emphasis was simply the input that we had in all of our community meetings. I think we had three or four community meetings. So, and one of them focused specifically on that. So.
And then, so you would say the overwhelming sentiment expressed in one of those community meetings was development over acquisition?
I don't know if I would say overwhelming. We use the old, circle dot on the different, and so I can't specifically remember how overwhelming the consensus were for different projects, but we took that information and prioritized it based on that. So it's always difficult when you have a small group from the community and you have a certain way you're doing it. It's hard to necessarily get good information that applies across the board, but that's kind of what we did. It's all we had to work on, so that's kind of the way we approached it. So I guess bottom line, we felt like we did what we were supposed to do, given what we knew about the document. But I think we also all understood that we didn't have a problem with being balanced. The council being able to be balanced with their opportunities and their obligations and all those kinds of things. So.
All right, thanks. And then another question I have is that the Doug Allen sports fields are classified as athletic fields, and I'm wondering, have they always been classified as athletic fields, or were they originally classified as something else?
Well, as far as I can recall, they've been classified as athletic fields or sports fields. The only thing they've ever had on them in addition to sports fields was for a period of time there was a park course that ran around the perimeter, but it's never had any other park elements to it, like a playground or anything like that.
And do you think that having it designated as an athletic field creates the expectation that it will eventually be turfed and lit like the North Creek playfields?
I guess I would say no, because we haven't set that as, when you go into the athletic field listing, we have talked about master planning that, but that doesn't necessarily mean synthetic turf and lights. I think it would be, first of all, difficult to put lights on that field with residents right next door to it. But I think the expectation, Robert said, is that those fields drain terribly and they are sloped. So if you play on field 3, you hope you get the downhill side when you're at the end of the game, because you can run downhill better than up. So that's what we would envision, kind of figuring out how to make that a better playable surface, but leave it grass.
Okay. All right, thanks. And then I had, I'm sorry I didn't get my word changes in like Councilmember Evans did, but I did have one suggested change to the language, and it is on page 81 of our agenda packet, which is the very beginning of the executive summary. And it's the second sentence that starts with by 2025. Based on the city's current boundaries, the population is expected to reach 44,500, and then in parentheses, based on projections from OFM. And I would like to suggest the following word change, or language change, because we don't define what OFM is. And so I would suggest that it be changed to say, by 2025, the State Office of Financial Management, and is that what OFM stands for? Okay. The State Office of Financial Management projects the population within the city's current boundaries will reach 44,500. So it's exactly what's there, just said differently. And then I understood from what Councilmember Evans said is that preceding that sentence would be the population estimate for the MUCA. Is that correct? So would we want to make another statement that says the combined population would be, if you wanted to make that impact for RCO grants, but and in general, I support all of the changes that Councilmember Evans has discussed. I think that if we alphabetize the priority project list, that also addresses the community concern that was expressed tonight about ranking North Creek Forest. Then it doesn't appear as, whatever number it is, it doesn't appear lower down the list. It appears on the list with equal importance. So I think that solves or addresses that issue. And then I guess I'll look forward to hearing more debate on that PRP5 policy.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. Councilmember Spivey or Lamb, any comments, questions?
I just had two questions. One is on athletic fields. I know Councilmember Spivey had raised this earlier in terms of sort of the equity of scheduling of those fields, and I wanted to invite him to step in if he wants to at any time. But if we were to address that here, what would be the appropriate location for doing that? Would it be on, I was thinking maybe page 18. There's PRA 21, because I have heard from a number of people in the community that it seems like certain sports have a lock on fields and certain other sports have a harder time getting scheduling time, and that's something that I'd like to see addressed if we can. And I don't know if would this be the most appropriate place to do that if we were going to address that in the PROSAP.
I guess it could go there, or it could go under park operations and maintenance on page 21 of PROSAP, page 95 of the packet.
And so that would be a new PR, like a...
Right. Would be an action.
Okay. And then we had some public testimony with respect to the acquisition of North Creek Forest and additional language on that. Right now, we simply have under PRA 4 complete acquisition of North Creek Forest. And I was wondering, would it be appropriate to include language like that in PRA 17, which has to do with the dog leash park, which essentially identifies and encourages the public to become involved in that and to reach grants, because that seems more consistent with the direction that we've taken and what speakers have said, is sort of calling out specifically that we're doing that through grant funding and doing that through private efforts as we have in the past. Would that be the appropriate place to put that?
So it would be appropriate to amend the PRA 43, where it says complete acquisition of North Creek Forest. We could take the dog park language and add that to this.
Okay. All right, and then I'll yield to Councilor Sully. I don't know if you had any additional thoughts on the scheduling issue.
Well, just my general thought is that our athletic fields, there's more and more competition for those spaces, and so really, I think we need to approach it. Needs to be approached regionally with our other community partners, other municipalities and the counties, as to we got to balance the field usage throughout the year, and we may have to start setting up this sport gets priority in this window of time at this time of year, the months ABCD, and these sports get it during EFG, and just so that we're balancing it out through the course of the year. Some sports essentially go year round. We had a speaker that said he's playing his sport essentially year round. So taking that into consideration, year-round sports, if we gave them priority in a lesser used time of year, and the ones that are specific to certain times, I just think there's a way to start balancing it out so that we're maximizing the usage year-round and giving those people as much play time as possible, but it just may be at a different time of year. I just think there's something out there that we could start looking at and approaching to providing the maximum benefit as well as the maximum usage of the fields year-round. But I think we need to talk about this regionally, because it have to be done as a regional approach to make it work. If one community does it one way, another does it a different, and it's patchwork, then it's less likely to be successful. So I think it's something that we have to approach from a regional standpoint on what are the seasons for these different sports, so that we can maximize their opportunities for their participants.
Would you yield back? I had one additional question for staff, and this has to do with PRA. It's on page 17. I think it's PRA 97. It was curious to me that Juanita, Simons, and Norway Hill was included for an area of acquiring new park space, because they have parks that are pretty proximate to that. We're also getting a new park in that area in terms of the annexation area that's coming in February. Is that something that staff feels is?
This map will hopefully help you out. These are the neighborhood parks or community parks that serve as neighborhood parks. So when we get down, sorry, my mouse isn't cooperating for me. So this is where East Norway Hill Park is that we're getting. It's 1.5 miles. The circle is 1.5 miles, which is kind of a standard service area. You really want a neighborhood park to be somewhat in walking distance. So when you do this circle, Blythe Park is the closest, but as you know, you can't really get there from these neighborhoods. You have to go all the way back into town to get there. So that's been a big hole that we've had for a long time in that area.
Okay. Thanks for that explanation. That is helpful. That's all the questions that I have.
If I can quickly address the sports field issue for you.
Sure.
It might be beneficial to provide you with the policies and guidelines that we use and that we share with the leagues every year. We do have seasons. Unfortunately, what's happening is seasons are changing again. Soccer is going to now have girls soccer when girls softball is playing, and it's going to tip the whole card upside down again. So, but we have tried to set up seasons for each league, and then we end up with seasons like lacrosse that crosses multiple seasons. So, at least if I gave you that document to start with, that might be helpful. You could at least.
I appreciate that. Are we still using that formula based on like the number of people registered?
Right. So we use a formula based on
league
the number of youth. It tends to be youth, not adults. So the number of youth that reside in Bothell that's how we place their teams, so their leagues. So if it's Little League season, which is the one that has the most number of groups trying to compete for field, the teams that have the most students residing in Bothell get first placement, and then the next group and the next group, so that ultimately all the teams that have kids from Bothell get some time, but they may only get one field a week, just based on sheer numbers, that we have teams from Kenmore that have kids living in Bothell.
Do you know, and this is a really unfair question off the top of your head, do you know what the allocation is between baseball and softball, or Little League and softball right now? Because as it was told to me, and again, that could be wildly inaccurate, I don't know, but that softball had, just in terms of number of allocations, had a larger allocation than Little League.
So North Shore Girls Slow Pitch has the bulk of has the first hit at the field time, because they have the majority of their girls live in the Bothell city limits. And then it's North Shore Little League. And then after that, I couldn't tell you. I just know it's those two groups have primarily the most number of youth living in Bothell. Now, keep in mind that North Shore Little League also represents girls fast pitch. So when they're booking fields, they are booking fields for fast pitch as well as Little League.
And this is pretty deep in the weeds. I mean, maybe I'll have a conversation with you offline, because that just kind of seems odd to me that slow pitch would have consistently year after year a higher percentage of people living in the city of Bothell than Little League. But
It has to do with their boundaries.
Sure.
But it does, yeah.
All right. Well, okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So have we ever approached the Bridlewood homeowners with their private park that they own as a potential city park? Because that would be almost dead smack in the middle of the Juanita Simons Norway Hill service area.
So we've never, to my knowledge, we've never approached any homeowners associations to take over their park that they were required to build.
Something that's unique about that one, it's right on 100th. So it's not like you even would need to drive into Bridlewood to access that park. Right now it is a private park. But maybe that's something to consider.
It could be. And I don't have I can't even picture that park at this moment. So the one thing we always have to caution is that when they're built, they don't always meet city standards, because they're not required to put in the same kind of equipment that'll last for 20, 25 years. So that would be the concern if we took over something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't meet city standards right now, because it is a private park. But something to look at.
Okay.
So I'll make comment on a few of Councilmember Evans' comments. I can agree with the whole front page here. I do have a concern with the page 14 change to PRP 5. The acquisition of future park sites and development of new existing parks should be balanced. I'm just thinking about the parks that we have right now that I feel that need our attention, that need to be focused on the improvements of what we already have, rather than go further out and to acquire more land. So that's personal perspective on that one. And on the back, the priority projects on page 63, putting it on alphabetical order, I always like to consider priorities. And as I look at the priorities, which I'm going to go back to, trying to be paperless sometimes is not the most efficient way. Really quick, page 63. I don't know, I just like for the Parks Committee has met, heard from the community of what they feel are priorities. And I like to listen to that and then list what the priorities may be, because otherwise we're left wondering what really should be the direction. So, one more page away. Like the North Creek Sports Field is important. We spent a good amount of time tonight talking about use of those fields. That was probably talked about more than any of the other parks that were talked about on here. Looking at the park at Bothell Landing, that's important. A large park within our community that needs attention to make sure that that develops. Certainly the sports fields and so on. So it goes down in priority. I disagree with number 13 where it's listed as a skateboard park. I like to see that moved up to top 4 or 5. But that's based upon my experience as a kid. So the motions will come at some point tonight. I would be more in favor of just leaving 4.3 as it's written, not putting in alphabetical order. I think a lot of thought has gone into how these should be listed here and how staff and the Parks Board should focus their attention, which for all of us as we are busy need to be focused on something. So those would be my comments tonight on what was raised. So that again I could agree with everything on the front of the page that Councilmember Evans presented tonight. I prefer just to leave the language on page 14, PRP5 as written. I may be a sole vote on that, but those are my only comments at this point. So since everybody's had a chance to speak, yes, Deputy Mayor Spivey.
I was just kind of responding to the Deputy Mayor's comments. He asked me to weigh in on the scheduling, so I like my opportunity, if you don't mind.
Member Lamb?
I also appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this by the Parks Board and the community and for their input. At the same time, I do like a lot of the suggestions that Councilmember Evans brought up. I rely on his park expertise from his background on many things. I also like Councilmember Sandberg's recommendation that she had proposed earlier. I could go either way with the make the priorities alphabetical or keep them the way they are. I could see the pros and cons to both of them, so I don't have much of an opinion on that. I understand the idea of balanced approach for acquisition versus development. We are limited in what is available out there, so if we don't change that language, then I hope that we all go with the idea that when rare opportunities arise, we need to capitalize on them. And I don't think that we're limiting ourselves so much with this document that we won't be able to do that. And we've done that. We look at North Creek Forest. Those are opportunities that have come up, and we've capitalized on that. And I'm sure there's others that will occur here in the near future. I'm prepared to make a motion if nobody else is there.
I'd move to close a public hearing.
Oh, well, then I would second that.
All right.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Deputy Mayor Spivey to close the public hearing. Is there any deliberation? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote to close the public hearing. And if the clerk could display. Councilmember Agnew is absent and excused. Do I need to click his deal to make something work?
No, you just leave it alone. Just leave it alone.
Are we at a redo?
So apparently the vote has passed with 6-0. So Councilmember Agnew is absent and excused. He spoke to me before his departure just about 3 minutes ago. So Councilmember Lamb?
So I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution to update the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, or PROSAP action plan with all of the changes proposed by Councilmember Evans that are listed on our dais. Additionally, with a change suggested by Councilmember Sandberg for the language in the preamble, and with the addition in PRG5 of the sentence which says to acquire and develop land for active park and recreation facilities, to have a comma and then say particularly in the Snohomish County portion of Bothell. That's my motion.
Great. So I have a motion by Councilmember Lamb, a second by Councilmember Evans. I do need clarification on your motion because Councilmember Sandberg spoke to two items. One was, let me get to that page. It was in the preamble.
So as I understand it, and Councilmember Sandberg, feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm mistaken, that it was to rework the second sentence to say the Office of Financial Management estimates that by 2025, the population is expected to reach 44,500 in the city's current boundaries, and then to provide for a combination of that amount with the projected population that currently is in our unincorporated planning area that utilizes, and to combine that. That was my understanding of her motion, or of her proposed changes.
Yes, and then the appendix of accomplishments.
That's correct. I had forgotten that, but I meant to include that in my motion.
Does Councilmember Lamb intend to include the backside as well, priority projects in alphabetical order?
I did.
And include additional other priority projects?
I did not. I just intended to include the projects that were listed in the priority. The other priority projects I did not intend to include in my motion.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So you are moving to accept the language change. You're moving to accept the language change in PRP5 proposed by Councilmember Evans to have balance in acquisition and development?
Yeah, so my motion is to have the PROSAP as presented with the changes that were proposed by Councilmember Evans in their entirety, with only three changes. One is the addition of the ideas that you had brought up, which I think we've articulated. The second is to add language that I added on PRG 5 at the end, which is to acquire and develop land for active park and recreation facilities, particularly in the Snohomish County portion of Bothell. And then the final one is removing the other priority projects that were there and simply having the priority projects that were listed. That was something that I think Councilor Evans had added into that.
Thank you.
Is everybody clear with the motion that's on the floor? Anybody make questions, comments? Councilmember Evans?
Well, I appreciate the discussion. As you know, this is a topic near and dear to my heart. And I think these are all good changes, and whether I brought them or not, I just, and the comprehensive plan is a comprehensive plan. It's not necessarily specific in a lot of ways, but it gives a general overview of what we want to do. And that was my thinking on the projects. They're all important projects. Well, I talked briefly about that, but just I will be voting in favor of the motion. But I think the one area that we really didn't discuss and that we don't have to necessarily discuss tonight is Section 5.1, costs and funding strategies. We can have these comprehensive plans and update them every 6 years and go through priorities, whatever. But until we find a way to fund our parks and recreation system, realizing that for example, athletic fields, we'll never build enough athletic fields. There's always a need for athletic fields, and there's going to always be opportunities come up that we're not aware of. But the fact is, we need to find a plan, and this funding strategies lists several options to us, and maybe there's others too. But I think that's where the responsibility of this plan, the park board did a good job putting it together. Now the responsibility is on our shoulders of how we fund this plan. And it isn't going to happen overnight, and we're never going to have enough funds. But at some point, we need to take a position on how we start funding some of these projects. One of the number one project, turfing field number 3 down there at Sportsfield, we have no funding designated for that, 0. So it's a high priority, but we don't have any funds for it. So I think that's the real key part of this document, is that we, the council, still have work to do on how we fund this, and hopefully we'll have some discussion on that in our retreat. And there's no easy answer to it, but to me, that's probably the most important section of the whole chapter, is how we're going to fund this, and now and in the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Any further questions, comments? I guess not questions, it's deliberation. Councilmember Sandberg.
I echo everything Councilmember Evans has said, and I'm struggling with whether or not I should make a motion, an amending motion, on this policy PRP5, because we want to be reflective of the community input, and this is the the balanced approach or the prioritization of development over acquisition. And I see the need for balance. I see that PRP6 provides for acquisition when possible. And I also see that in this motion, this main motion, when we have the priority projects, acquisition just happens to be at the top because it starts with the letter A. So I guess I'll make a motion, and if there's a second, then so be it. But I would make an amending motion to leave language PRP5 as originally proposed by the Parks Board, which is to leave it as acquisition of future park sites and development of existing sites should be given priority over acquisition of additional park sites. That's my amending motion.
I'll second that. So the motion would be to revert to the language in PR5 to focus more on development of existing assets rather than acquisition, or a balanced approach of acquisition to development. So it is a policy issue, definitely, for sure, that we can discuss as a council. Councilmember Evans?
Again, I stated my reasons why I think acquisition is a top priority. The reality is, I don't know how much property we'll ever be able to acquire. We don't have any money necessarily set aside for that right now. But the other thing here is that, for example, North Creek Forest, a good example. We got funding to acquire property there because that was a grant program that was out there that was available. So some of the grants that come to us can only be used in certain areas. So whether or not in reality we're really able ever to balance this thing exactly, probably won't happen. This was a pretty general statement, realizing the background of this is we're going to fund projects as grants come to us or whatever we look at as funding sources and things. So I just, the balance part is, maybe we should just say acquisition of future park sites and development of new and existing parks. I don't care whether but I just know that there's a demand in all areas, and if whether we can ever balance it or not, I think it's important to recognize that both areas are important.
Great. Councilmember Lamb?
I won't be supporting the amending motion, and I think, we asked, our chair was specifically asked whether or not this was sort of an overwhelming public response, and he indicated that it was not. It was something where people put dots on a board. And I think we've heard from the community emphatically and overwhelmingly, particularly with regard to the North Creek Forest, that acquisition of lands is important. And I think balancing that with acquisition and development is important. And our job as leaders of the community is not just to sort of recite back what we perceive to be public opinion on a given issue, but to use wisdom and to use discernment and judgment to take in everybody's comments throughout our service and to make the best decisions that we can. I also think that the way that it was construed, or the way that if we were to only favor development over acquisition, it kind of freezes the field as it exists right now. And there are certain parts of our cities that are extremely underserved by parkland that if as development progresses, and development fortunately is progressing and is heating up in our community, once that land is lost, you never get it back. There's never an opportunity once development goes into, other than the scenario that the mayor outlined, which actually could be good, is to say you've developed a small pocket park and we'll take that and we'll maintain it and we'll improve it on behalf of the citizens. But large acquisitions of park, large acquisitions of forest land, can't happen after a subdivision goes in or after a commercial building goes in. So I really think that Councilor Evans' language was balanced, it was appropriate, and I think it does reflect the broad public sentiment and broad public opinion that we've heard over many, many hearings and over many opportunities to correspond with the public. So I support the language as it was presented by Councilor Evans, and I won't be supporting the amending motion.
Great, thank you. Any further comment? Well, I'll certainly comment on this item. I do like the language that says development of existing sites should be given priority over acquisition of additional park sites. It doesn't say that we shouldn't acquire additional park sites. It just says that we need to place priority. I think of city staff and the Parks Board that have a designated time within a year where they should put their focus. And we have current assets that I like to see improve within our city. So that, for me, I would like to place more of importance on rather than balance, because, again, where do we want to place our bow? I say place our bow and our focus on where we have current sites that need to have attention to serve the existing citizens of the city of Bothell. We should continue to consider acquisition. I just want to put my priority this year on improving existing sites or parks. So Councilmember Ray or Spivey, we haven't heard from either one of you. Comments or no? You're fine? Fine. Great. So the amendment on the table is to change the language back to the language that's stated on page 14, P5, development of existing sites should be given priority over acquisition of additional park sites. So if everybody wants to place their vote, hopefully it will work this time. We shall see. If you could display the vote. It fails 4-2 with Councilmember. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm totally messed up. I want to vote yes. I did vote yes. My eyes aren't working tonight. So Councilmember Sandberg, who made the motion, voted no. So typically if we make a motion, we vote for it. Okay, Councilmember Rayum voted in favor. Councilmember Freed voted in favor. Councilmember Lamb, Evans, and Spivey against, and Councilmember Agnew is absent and excused. So the language is as existing under the underlying motion. Any further comment, Councilmember Rayum?
Is the other point of clarification? Is the underlying motion an amending motion, or is it the
no? The amending motion failed 4-2.
Okay. So I'd like to make an amending motion.
Okay.
I have a couple of them, but I'm just going to do one because I know it's a no-brainer. But incorporate the tables that were given in our packet into the actual plan. It's tables 2 and 3 to reflect the King County annexation information. Same with tables 8, 9, 10, and 11. Those need to reflect the King County annexation areas, and table 6 and 7, I guess. Just about every table in the whole thing updated with the King County annexation information.
Is it already included? Yeah.
Oh, it's already been incorporated. Okay. That makes it easier. Okay, so my other amending motion is to change PRP25.
PR.
It's on page 17, it looks like. This was something I mentioned, I think it was in the study session.
On page 16?
It's on page 17 it's in that little table at the beginning of it's in the staff report.
PRP25 is page 16 of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm on page 67 of the packet, if that helps.
So what's the language included that you're...
Just recommend or make a mini motion that PRP25 is changed as shown in the on page 67 of 160, striking the consideration should be given to and adding should be used.
Second.
So I need to get to the, I'm looking at PRP P25 that says when developing or upgrading park facilities and infrastructure, consideration should be given to alternatives that lessen the impact of the environment consistent with low impact development techniques.
That's it, yeah. And so I'm trying to amend it where I would strike the consideration should be given to, so strike that whole piece, and then add at the end of it the sentence should be used. It still provides wiggle room. Oh wait, you already seconded my motion, didn't you?
So you want to have standard that low impact development techniques are in our parks.
I just have angst about consideration should be given to whenever I write anything that's a plan or a policy or a standard. Consideration should be given to is slightly above think about it and forget it. So I just think it makes more sense. It provides wiggle room still, but it should be used as just a stronger statement than consideration should be given to.
Okay, so that was your motion. Did you have a second? We had a second by Councilmember Sandberg. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Evans?
Okay, just to be clear, we're on page 67 of the packet. These were the recommendations that I think staff had made, and some of those that come from the park board and that type of thing. So PRP 25, as I read it in here, it says, when developing or upgrading park facilities and infrastructure, alternatives that lessen the impact on the environment consistent with low impact development techniques should be used. So consideration should be given. That's been stricken. So
Right.
so you want it to include it the way it's drafted here.
Yeah, the way it's drafted with the strikeout appropriately marked in the packet on page 67. I assumed that all these things were not updated in the plan because it said these are areas for additional discussion. So I'm sorry if these.
You're correct in that.
I thought the tables needed to be a motion needed to be made for those as well as these additional pieces. But I guess are they incorporated into the existing ProSAP that we're voting on?
I had gone ahead and done the updates to the table, so.
Will you withdraw your second? I'll withdraw my amendment then.
So, I'm sorry. I updated the tables. I did not do these other changes on this chart.
Oh, okay. Well then.
Just the tables.
Just for clarification.
Yeah, Councilmember Lamb.
I'm sorry, Councilor. I was going to ask a question ask the permission of the chair to ask a question of staff on this, but I'll yield to Councilmember Sandberg.
Well, I think that the amending motion is appropriate because the language
correct.
before us on page 90 of the agenda packet is not updated language from the table.
Correct.
And so if we want that language to
You're right.
Be adopted, we need to have this amending motion.
So I was going to ask the indulgence of the chair if I could ask, although we're in deliberations, if I could ask a question of staff.
I think having clarification on this table would be important.
And this isn't, well, actually, the question isn't about the table. It has to do with the one question I had on this, making it sort of consideration as opposed to permissive, is for something like turfed fields. At some level, you're almost never, almost by definition, turf fields aren't really a low impact development technique. I mean, if you're replacing a turf field or replacing grass with a turf field, I'm just concerned that the way it is right now, you give consideration to it, but I would be interested in your perspective in terms of that issue and also just the issue of expense or why it was initially put in that way.
This was board language that was added in, so I'm deferring to make sure I don't misspeak for them. So our recollection was that the Public Works Superintendent who oversees the park maintenance and operations, when we were working on this language, that he had commented that for synthetic turf, there are some lower impact synthetic turf options out there that we could consider, so it didn't preclude it. It's definitely not green. I mean,
Yeah.
So if it's recycled turf versus recycled rubber, I mean, that would be what you'd be looking for when you're purchasing.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody make Your motion's still on the floor, I assume, yes? Okay, and your second is still seconding? Okay. Councilmember Lamb had an opportunity to speak to the amendment. Anybody else? Councilmember Spivey?
I agree with the intent on the language change, but I don't want it to hamstring us in our development. When you say should, it's getting to be pretty strong language that's what you need to do. And the concern of field turf or other options that are out there that maybe there is no other way to do it, or it's so cost prohibitive that then the project doesn't get done. That's my concern. And so I think we need to consider those options, but I don't think we should do those. I think there's enough of a variance in the language that I think it can really hamstring some projects that and make some projects just too cost prohibitive to move forward with. So I won't be supporting the language.
Okay, Councilmember Sandberg?
I think the language is a little more clear when you just say should be used. It's not shall be used, so it's not a requirement. And I feel as though if it were kept as written, when when developing the facilities, consideration should be given to alternatives. I mean, to me, that language is so non-binding as to not even warrant its presence there. So I think that the suggested change provides direction without being prescriptive because it does say should and not shall. So that's why I'm supporting the motion.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. You want to speak to your motion, Councilmember Rayam?
I would like to, yes.
Okay.
So, so I guess I stumbled a little bit there. So, environment. Okay, so lessen the impact on the environment consistent with low impact development techniques. So we're not talking about turf. We're not talking about what kind of color paint you use or any of those types of things. What we're talking about is stormwater management. And I guess I just assumed that's what everybody kind of would have realized. But so it has nothing to do with turf. It doesn't have to do with, you have to build. You have to build it a certain design in a certain way. It's really just an alternative use of a stormwater. It's an alternative stormwater infrastructure technique that actually is going to be the preferred technique by 2016. So I was trying to be more consistent with where things are going in how we design and build facilities. So I'm obviously support my motion. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Evans, I was trying to remember if you spoke to this, but I don't believe you did.
No, just briefly, I didn't read into that was just stormwater improvements. My impression is it's any potential low-impact development standards should be considered. Pervious hard surface, pervious asphalt, for example, should be considered in development, which indirectly may relate to storm drainage. But so I'm fine with the way it's drafted on page 16 here. We're going to consider any alternatives that lessen the impact of the environment consistent with low-impact development techniques. I think that comes out in the SEPA process when you do a SEPA on a project. So I think it's more of an automatic than something I think we have to do. It gets considered in my mind. So I'm fine with the way it is on page 16.
Okay. And I have no further comments on this motion, so we've all had a chance to speak. So this amendment is made by Councilmember Rayum, and it would be to change the language in PRP 25. So there's a table on page 67, but it's reflected on page, I believe, 90 of 160 in the report, and to change the language to when developing or upgrading park facilities and infrastructure, alternatives that lessen the impact of environmental consistent with low impact development technique should be used. So if everybody could place their vote, and if the clerk can display, the motion fails. split vote with Councilmember Sandberg. Oh, shoot. Sorry. I am just getting everything backwards. It fails. Councilmember Sandberg and Rayum in favor, with Councilmember Freed, Lamb, Evans, and Spivey opposed, and Councilmember Agnew absent and excused. You still have the floor, Councilmember Rayum. I believe Councilmember Spivey is the only one who hasn't spoken to the underlying motion.
I believe earlier I was supportive. I was getting ready to make a motion. I was showing support for essentially what was moved, so I will be supporting the underlying motion.
Okay, so everybody's had an opportunity to speak. Besides the mayor, I'm still concerned with putting the priority projects in alphabetical order, but so be it. So everybody's had a chance to speak. Do we want to open it up for another round of conversation? Seeing no nodding heads, if everybody could place their vote. And here's the underlying motion made by Councilmember Lamb, seconded by Councilmember Evans, to approve the language as presented here on the dais tonight by Councilmember Evans, including all changes. There was additional changes suggested by Councilmember Sandberg, which added language to the top of page, the introduction, page 7, which would say by 2025, the State Office of Financial Management projects the population will reach 44,500, and then would add additional language after what was suggested. The remaining urban growth area includes blank population that currently utilizes existing park and recreational facilities and programs. So we're deferring to Community Development Director to fill in the blanks with appropriate numbers of the population. And then there was an additional add. It was, oh, yes, on the back. Sorry, thank you. We are not including the other priority projects on the back page, but we are going to alphabetical order on the priority projects in this motion. And then there was adding an appendix. Councilmember Sandberg would like to see that included. So all in favor? One more thing?
Language change to PRG 5.
Oh, thank you very much. Language change to PRG 5. If everybody can place their vote. And if the clerk can display. Passes unanimously with Councilmember Agnew absent and excused. We do have an executive session tonight from my recollection. Is that still accurate?
No, that is correct, Mayor, for approximately 15 minutes, and we do anticipate action following the executive session. But prior to the executive session, if I could ask council to confirm the retreat agenda that was included in your folders tonight, and I mistakenly did not include one of the topics that was discussed last week, and what should have been included either immediately before the Canyon Park Regional Growth Center future planning item or immediately after, which would be a discussion labeled petition method annexation opportunities. And with that, I would ask that council confirm the agenda.
So how would you have us confirm that? We don't need to, we just need to say that we confirm it?
You can certainly do it by motion. You can do it lack of any objection to the agenda. That's the packet that you'll be receiving next week as staff prepares and finalizes for the retreat.
Let me take 30 seconds just to read down. Okay. I see no objection. Councilmember Sandberg? No? Yeah. We're just going to go down the line. No? Councilmember Rayum? Councilmember Lamb?
I have no objection as long as the annexation issue of this race is included.
Okay. Councilmember Evans?
I believe it was Councilmember Sandberg mentioned emergency services,
Emergency preparedness.
emergency preparedness.
Correct. As you noted in the cover letter, there is a memorandum from Fire Chief Van Horn regarding emergency preparedness.
Okay.
He is not available for the retreat, and therefore we didn't schedule that topic on the retreat.
Councilmember, or you finished, Councilmember Evans?
Well, I haven't read it, but that's probably fine. But if if we did want to discuss it, if there was something came up from the memo, we wanted to do some additional discussion, where would we? Would that come under?
Lunchtime.
I think open discussion periods, we have lunchtime discussion periods. I try to leave enough flexibility there for topics that you hadn't designed to discuss, but during the retreat felt it to be appropriate.
Okay, great. I didn't see the memo here. Thank you.
Councilmember Spivey, or Deputy Mayor Spivey, any comments on the agenda?
No, it looks good. And like Councilmember Lamb, I want to hear about the annexation discussion.
Good deal. So there you go, City Manager.
Thank you very much. And just as a reminder, the executive session this evening is on pending litigation.
Pending litigation, you said 15 minutes. Based upon history, I say we say it may take up to 30 minutes. Council may come back earlier. So we'll go into executive session. So Boston City Council is back from executive session. We're expecting two more members to come, but we do have a quorum.
Mayor, I would move to authorize the city manager to approve a settlement with the Washington Department of Ecology regarding the city's NPDES Phase 2 permit appeal, various definitions, and the 1 acre threshold stormwater detention exception substantially in compliance with the terms as discussed with the city attorney.
So we have a motion from Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Evans. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote for the motion that's on the floor. If the clerk could display, we have the motion passes unanimously with nobody opposed and Councilmember Agnew absent and excused. We have no further items on the agenda tonight. So we're ended. We're excused.
We are ended.
We're in.